Hi everyone, this is Tim Hiller, and welcome back to Next Level Leadership Conversations. We're having conversations with former collegiate and professional athletes about their experience as an athlete, but more importantly, the character and leadership it requires to perform at the highest level. My conversation today is with my friend Paul Smith, who was the quarterback at the University of Tulsa for 3 years. He was the starter there. He had a 3.84 grade point average in the finance realm and was an incredible performer, earning all conference honors. And he was a finalist for what was known as the Draddy Trophy back then. Now it's called the Campbell Trophy, the National Scholar Athlete of the Year, or also known as the Academic Heisman. He was also a Warfel Trophy winner, which honors his community service to use the platform of football to give back. He's an incredible leader. He even spent some time after college in the NFL, mostly with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now he's a dad, a business leader, and someone that we all can respect and admire. I hope you enjoy our conversation as we talk about being trustworthy as a leader. Hey, Paul, thanks for being with us today to talk about being trustworthy as a leader, and we appreciate your time. Looking forward to getting to know you a little bit. As we start off, we'd love to hear just kind of an overview of your life, your story, and help us get to know you some more.
Sure. Well, I grew up the son of a high school football coach, so I wrote in my second grade journal that I want to play quarterback in the NFL like Joe Montana. And our younger audience might not know, but I would say look at everything that Tom Brady and Drew Brees have done, and that's the kind of guy Joe Montana was, winning Super Bowls for the 49ers when I was a youngster. So I really spent my youth and what eventually became high school and college years pursuing the opportunity to try to become an NFL quarterback. And so since both parents were educators in the school, we took academics very seriously. I would love to say that I would have taken them seriously just on my own initiative. But it helps when you have a mom and dad that are teachers and teach you the value of doing the right thing all the time. It's going to come into play as we talk about being trustworthy. But my dad, being a coach, just basically used to talk to me about if you get up and you make your bed and your room is clean and you help with the laundry, it's going to make your homework seem a lot easier because you're instilling disciplines and you're starting to show others that you can be relied on even within your family. So grew up pursuing that dream, and because of that, like I said, I made great grades. I always did my best in the classroom, and that kind of led to the football field and other, baseball diamonds and basketball courts, and wasn't very good around the track, but did as many sports as I could, and eventually got a chance to fulfill my dream of playing quarterback in the NFL.
That's awesome. And so when we talk about trust today, and I want to jump right into that, you played quarterback. I mean, one of the highest levels of trust a coach puts in a player, an extension of the coaching staff on the field. But being trustworthy, we're going to define that as being counted on to follow through on my commitments. So I think there's two parts to that. One is, first of all, I make commitments. So I don't shy away from saying yes to something and no to something else, but I'm willing to make a commitment. And the second piece is once I've made that commitment, I'm going to follow through. So talk about how that is a foundation of trust, not just as an athlete, but as a person, if you want to lead others.
Sure. Well, I think you said that you've got to be willing to do things, following through on your commitments. So you've got to be willing to make commitments. And being trustworthy is part of leadership, certainly. I think that was under level 4, leading others for you guys. And to lead others, you have to take the initiative at times. And I'll go ahead and kind of spoil everything up front. When you asked me to talk about trustworthy, I just sat down and wrote down some things. And so since this is being recorded, I've got my list here. Probably not very legible, but
accountability.
You didn't provide your definition before, so I kind of just sat down and took some time writing down some of the things on what it would be to be trustworthy. So you talk about following through on your commitments. A few of the things I wrote down, do the right thing all the time. Be consistent. You got to be willing to admit when you're wrong. Keep your word, like you said, following through on those commitments. So you're doing the right thing, but then you've got to keep your word and follow through on it. With your actions. So I did put that, if you can see there, follow through.
I love it.
On your actions or with your actions. And then 2 other things, be a good communicator. If you're going to build trust with others, I think you've got to start thinking about how to communicate efficiently. And you can't be one that sits back and never speaks up. I don't think anyone likes the guy who has something to say about everything. So that kind of goes back to admit when you're wrong. But being a good communicator is essential in building trust. And then that segues into my final thing, know when to rely on others. So sometimes you don't have to have an answer to everything. You don't have to be the one that always speaks up. Sometimes it's good to observe, but I think more people err on the side of sitting back too often. So like you said, follow through on your commitments. To become trustworthy, you've got to be willing to make commitments.
So let's talk about making commitments then. Some people might call them goals. Some people might think it's more of a decision. The reality is you were a Division I quarterback. You later played in the NFL. At some point, some of your friends were probably making choices that were at odds with the decisions that you were making because you had higher goals. You had things you wanted to achieve. And it wasn't that they didn't want to be a good person, but maybe they just had some different things in mind, or they didn't have a long-term vision. At what point did you see that maybe some of your commitments were harder to make or they cost you something? And how did you handle that?
Sure, great question. I look back early on when, just thinking about the work ethic that I got the opportunity to see. I was very fortunate with my dad being a coach, and he coached at a very prominent football program at a high school here in the state of Oklahoma. There were a lot of Division I athletes that he coached throughout his career leading up to when I became a high school athlete and first started getting recruited. So you can go back to fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. I know everybody chooses to start their sports at a different time, but for me, my school actually had school football, basketball, and baseball in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. So we played, and there were small decisions I had to make early on, even at that young age, 10, 11, 12 years old, um, of things I was going to do. I talked about the classroom and the type of person I was going to be, but I chose the position of quarterback. And it doesn't matter if you're the left guard, the quarterback, or the free safety. You need to be reliable as a teammate. And to become trustworthy, you're going to have to make some decisions, as you were leading into with your question, that aren't always the most popular, as far as what your kids are doing and what they're saying and how they're speaking to others. And so I kind of realized that, if you're going to build trust and you're going to become a leader, you're going to have to do some things that the crowd is not always doing. And, that's okay. I mean, I'm a man of faith. And for me, I kind of always known from what the Bible says that, we're on a narrow path and narrow is the gate and few will find it. I knew that in my life, not only in my faith, but in the classroom and on the football field, I was going to need to do things that the crowd was not always doing.
Definitely. And so when you think about, I love you used the word reliability earlier, and someone that has earned my trust as a good teammate in the workplace or back when we were athletes is someone that every single time you just knew they would get the job done. You just knew that you could count on the type of person they would be, the way they would treat you, that consistent reliability. Talk to me about how do we develop that? Because the word that comes to mind is habit. Some of this is a habit, and we hear, there's books about habit formation and how do we get better at these type of things. What were some ways as you were establishing yourself as a young athlete and moving into those high school years and beyond that you were establishing that pattern of repeated following through, repeated trust?
Sure. Well, the very first thing I wrote down was do the right thing all the time. And so, when I thought about, I keep bringing up the classroom and the sports arena, but I mean, there's a lot of similarities from if you're not going to be late to your class, depending on what age you are, there's some flexibility on when a bell rings or when whatever happens to indicate you need to be in class. I always learn that if I'm one of the first ones seated, I can either get a jump start on my work, or I can start to have a conversation with my teacher, or I can just get my mind right to do the right thing. Well, in football, you're not always studying film at a young age, but I learned that doing the right thing all the time, sometimes just get there on time, maybe get there early. Make sure you're building the habits that are going to help you become successful. And I learned that if you're not telling everyone what to do, but you're showing them from the habits that you've instilled in your own life, a lot of people will respond to that if you're doing positive things. And you'll find out that, not everyone kind of has the courage to be a leader. And I have plenty of insecurities in my life. Obviously, I'm not insecure anymore about looking like an old man because I busted out the flannel jacket today. It's a little chilly. But I had a lot of insecurities as an athlete. And so I had to try to do the right thing all the time to kind of get through those insecurities and realize, what, people will respond to that. And they might not always verbalize it, but some of your teammates that might not have the same personality as you, or they don't like taking the driver's seat and the initiative on everything, you need to instill those good habits in your own life. And people will respond to that, especially when we're talking about team sports, where it's vitally important for everyone to be tugging on the same rope in the same direction.
That's well said. And there's a quote I love. I was thinking about our conversation today. It says, "The reputation of 1,000 years can be destroyed in a single moment." As you think about 10,000 times you do the right thing, and then maybe we do make a bad mistake. And it's not that we can't rebound from it, but that can destroy trust. On the positive side of that quote, I think sometimes you never know when the moment's coming, but at some point a moment pops up that you can earn the trust of others, that you can step into that role as a leader. I can think of an example in my own life where I was coming back from an injury, and the way I handled the injury was an opportunity. Didn't foresee the injury coming, didn't foresee that it would earn others' trust, but the way in which I handled it was a great opportunity as a leader. Can you think of a moment or a story or an example in your journey to leading as a quarterback that you think you earned that trust and stepped into that role as a trustworthy leader?
Sure. No, great question. I would say going into my senior year at the University of Tulsa, where I played college, I was fortunate to start as a sophomore and a junior. And then we lost our head coach coming out of my junior year. We had been to back-to-back bowl games as a sophomore. We had won a conference championship and gone to the top bowl game that we were able to go to for my conference. Had a good year as a junior, went to another bowl game. And then our head coach left, and most of the coaching staff left. And so we got a new head coach and got a new offensive coordinator, but we had lost a lot of weapons on offense. So being a quarterback, there was a lot of opportunities to doubt and to kind of look around. But I think trying to continue to be trustworthy, I wanted the guys to be able to rely on me. And fast forward to that next year, we ended up, getting a great offensive coordinator named Gus Malzahn, who's currently the head coach at Auburn. But we started a bunch of freshmen. So my leading receivers, which is pretty important when you're a quarterback, were 2 true freshmen and a junior college transfer that had just come in. And so I needed to show them throughout the summer and throughout fall camp, because especially the freshmen, we didn't get a lot of time together. They came a little bit early before the fall semester began, but I didn't have a lot of time. So it was vitally important for my actions to show that I could be trusted and that I could be counted on. And like you said, you think of takes one bad apple, right, to ruin the bunch. And so same thing that you're saying, 1,000 good decisions can be ruined. And I just knew when I wrote down do the right thing all the time, there's always someone watching. And you might not think that you're the definition or the epitome of a leader, but you'd be surprised as you grow up and you look back and you hear stories about people that were watching you. And so I think I would try to encourage the young men and young women that think they might not be the leader right now, or that they're more of a follower. There's still people watching you. Because I can tell you, as one of the most outgoing, strongest leaders that any of my friends or family have been around, I did a lot of watching others. And some of those people that would tell me that they didn't think they were leaders, I was watching how they responded to adversity. And I was watching how they did the right thing all the time. And so I knew if I was going to put my money where my mouth is, as the saying goes, that I had to do the right thing every single time. And did I make mistakes? Sure. I made plenty of mistakes. But I needed to focus on that every day. There's a lot of people watching me. And if I can be consistent in doing the right thing, it can build more credibility, which leads to more trust. And then we're all going to be doing the right thing together.
I love it. That's well said. And I'll have you just put on your coach's hat for a moment as a son of a coach, extension coach.
I didn't bring it with me. A tissue box.
There it is. There, perfect. Balance that the whole time you're talking.
Exactly.
We put on the coach's hat figuratively, and we talk about a coach like Gus Malzahn, your own father, you being an extension of a coach on the field as a quarterback. Talk to me about it. We have probably 9 to 18, 19-year-olds listening to this that aspire to accomplish some of the things that you have in your life and your career. You're that coach, and you're talking about qualities and the things you're looking for in a player that's trustworthy, right? The person I want to start, the person I want to put on the field. What are some of those things that you're looking for that you've seen over the years?
Well, sure. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to the things you and I've talked about. If I'm now coaching them up, I'm going to talk about the same things that I heard as a coach's kid, right? I said doing the right thing enough on this, but it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of times where you're in a smaller group and you think, hey, these are my buddies. These are my closest friends. Now I can really cut loose, or now I can let my guard down a little bit. But hey, those closest friends may very well be your teammates. And as you know, buddies talk to each other. And so I think even in the smallest group, it takes a lot of courage to do the right thing all the time. I wrote down, keep your word. So if I'm a coach and I'm talking to these young men and young women, I'm telling them that, your word is vitally important. It doesn't take very many times for you to say that you're going to do something and not follow through on it, or, tell them that this is what happened and in reality something else happened. doesn't take very many of those times for you to break your word, for people to start labeling you as unreliable. And if you're trying to be trustworthy, I think one of the worst things you can do is, you talked about making commitments and following through on them, is breaking your word and breaking your promise and breaking those commitments that you're making to others. So if I'm coaching guys up, I'm telling them, you got to keep your word. You got to follow through on your actions. And it's okay if you don't have the perfect answer every single time. You got to start learning who you can rely on, which is why, again, it comes back to why it needs to be important for you guys to be leaders, because sometimes you're going to rely on others. And so in doing that, it takes a lot of humility, but you need to be picking up on, who do you think is trustworthy? Who do you see following through on their commitments? And do you want to be that type of person, or do you want to be the wishy-washy person that no one's quite sure if they can rely on at any given moment because they've seen enough inconsistency? So I'd say it comes back to that very first point. Just keep doing the right thing all the time. You know you're going to make mistakes. You know you're going to have to ask others for help. You know you're going to have to rely on others at times. But when people are relying on you, make sure you're following through on those commitments.
Absolutely. So well said. As we wrap up here, any final kind of words of advice or encouragement that you would offer as we go on our way to become more trustworthy as people and leaders?
Sure. I mean, I just would say, take advantage of the small moments. You just never know what small moment. You talked about coming back from injury. I talked about how I responded with a new coach and a bunch of young teammates coming in that don't know me from Adam, and having to be reliable every day. But I'd say, be on the lookout, be on your guard, keep your head on a swivel, because these small opportunities present themselves every day. And I think the more that you can be consistent in those commitments, I think the better chance you're going to have in succeeding, because you've heard it from Tim and many, many others, and certainly myself. Time flies. I look up now and 35 years old with 4 young children under the age of 10. And now being trustworthy is about my children knowing that they can trust their dad when I say something is good for them, or I'm trying to protect them from something. It's the same values I learned as a 4th, 5th, and 6th grader when I was playing team sports with all my buddies. So I'm just going to leave you with, take advantage of the small opportunities, and you never know when those small ones are going to lead to huge opportunities.
Awesome. Paul, thanks, man. You are a trustworthy leader. You're the epitome of this topic, and we appreciate your friendship. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, great to join you. Thanks.